St. Augustine Port Waterway and Beach District, January 18th, 2022. All rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is invocation. Is it James? This Tom. That's Chris. Go ahead.
Lord, we come before you today asking you to be with us as we deliberate the affairs of waterways around the surrounding St. Augustine, St. John's County. Be with us and let our deliberations be with your wisdom. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Next is roll call.
Commissioner Rivers? Commissioner Rivers? Commissioner Way?
Here.
Commissioner Brown?
Here.
Commissioner Flowers?
Here.
Commissioner West? Absent.
Next is adoption and approval of agenda. Since we have the modifications to the agenda, I'd like to add, subtract.
Mentioned it, okay, I just didn't wasn't aware at the time that Commissioner West wouldn't be here. I thought the court consultant would be really important. And what do y'all think about waiting for her to come back?
I would be fine with tabling that discussion until Commissioner West is back.
And what also about the, I just didn't know she was going to be here for a couple of days. And that was really important. I was hoping she'd be here. I was also hoping she could be here for the clarification of sunshine law.
I think that makes sense, and I'll also add that the website redesign was she spearheaded that, so
Yeah.
It might actually make sense for us to go ahead and drop under new business B, C, and D. Does anybody have any objections to that, or say you want to move to modify the agenda as?
Yes, I'm just going to mark our agenda so we can wait for her to get back to those important items.
I'll second that. Additional discussion. All in favor? Aye. Great, so agenda is modified as moved. New business B, C, and D will be tabled until next meeting. Okay, next up is public comment.
Happy New Year. Ed Slavin, Fox 308 Forum, edslavin.com. I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for attending the meetings of the GTM Bureau Advisory Committee. I've been asking for some time if we have a designated person to do the liaison, and we finally do. We had a designated person as a liaison before, but Dr. Shirley told me that he never attended meetings. That was the guy we had to run off because he wasn't a legal resident of St. Johns County or this district. And I'm glad that Barry Mark Benjamin is no longer on this board. Now, I have a couple suggestions as to how to maybe make the meetings go a little faster and more efficiently. Ms. West has missed, what did I say, 4 meetings since she was elected for the top group.
That's the least of the.
Oh, did Ms. West miss 5 meetings, Matt?
It's not an interactive process.
Don't give me orders.
I'm not giving you orders. You have 5 minutes.
I'm speaking. Don't interrupt me, son. Ms. West has missed 4 or 5 meetings. Now, any other board should be kicked off, and I'm not saying to kick her off because she's a fine lobbyist for the Florida, Thousand Friends of Florida, but you've got a 60-day legislative session every single year. She's going to be in Tallahassee every single year as she serves on this board. Let me suggest that what you do should be similar to what the school board does. They have remote participation, similar to what the Annotation and Mosquito Control District of St. Johns County, the MCD, does. They have a rule where if a commissioner has to miss a meeting for a very good reason, and I consider being a legislative lobbyist to be a very good reason, they can attend remotely by telephone or video. They have to attend gavel to gavel the entire meeting. They just can't cherry pick. But she could easily be attending this meeting if you were to amend these rules. And otherwise, I was prepared to speak on the attorney contract today. The gentleman just interrupted me. And it's not on the agenda. There are other things that are not on the agenda. And your agenda is suffering, and public comment is suffering, and public participation is suffering because, well, apparently, some lawyer told y'all couldn't have remote participation. Now, Dwayne Flowers, who's a partner at Lewis, Longman & Walker, is a longtime attorney attorney for the Mosquito Control District, and he agreed with Commissioner Mueller, and he agreed with me, it's doable. So could you please direct your attorney to research remote participation by the public and by commissioners in our meetings, to where we don't have these kind of folks off in the future? Is that too much to ask? School board, I recently learned, I was attending some school board meetings. There's an environmental justice issue at St. Augustine High School where apparently they think that kids should wrestle on top of mold contaminated mats. But I found out that the school board, still, notwithstanding COVID, supposedly being ended by the governor, so-called, the school board has remote participation by the public on every single agenda item. It's not Zoom, it's some special product that they have for school boards. But I had spoken about the need to respect the students' rights to not be contaminated with mold and wrestling mats. And sure enough, John calls in, Ken McLean, who's the deacon at St. Paul AME Church. It's like the voice of God. And he called up and he told them, Ed Slavin knows the law. You need to listen to him. And I don't see why the school board can find it within their hearts and their souls and their legislative and legal talent to have meetings with remote participation. And why can't the Waterloo District do it? You need better legal advice. You need a good attorney. You need to rebid the attorney contract. And we need to have greater public participation in terms of the future. Because as I've told y'all, we need to apply the 7th-generation test. How does what this board and Waterloo District does? How does what you do, how is it going to impact life here in 7 generations? We've got global ocean level rise. We've got global warming. We've got serious problems that this district could be dealing with. And Ms. West is not here. And you've made no effort to anticipate her absence. I mean, you knew when she became a lobbyist for 1,000 Friends of Florida. Fine group, I'm thinking of joining her. But you're basically spending your words at this meeting today. There are things that should have been on the agenda today that aren't there. Because apparently, Ms. Jennifer is not a staff person. She's a contractor or consultant. Apparently, she feels like she could just arrange the agendas. I thought the chairman of the board set the agenda. Isn't that true? The chairman sets the agenda, and I actually works in the county office and, interviews people's records. Thank you.
And I don't think our charter passed that like the county does, the chairman set the agenda, but.
I don't set the agenda. You guys, it's sent to you first. Yeah, it's all the drafts are sent to you guys if you want something changed or added. I don't set the agenda, so enough. Get your facts straight.
Good afternoon. Terry Parker, 9181 G. Johnson Road, St. Augustine. I'm here today to report on the Sandpits project at Summer Haven New. As of yesterday afternoon, the project is complete. As per the specifications and drawings, in accordance with the permit. It went very well. It started a week ago Monday. It took approximately 6 days from start to completion. The other good news is we have a reduction in cost of almost $4,000, $3,891.85 to be exact. And as a result of some donated materials from an individual and an error in the original bid. There were an overage in materials in the original bid. So the combination of the two saved $3,891.
So they've already been paid?
I believe Elise has the
Waiting for you to say yes.
Today I'll deliver it to them, and the job is very satisfactory. Any questions, comments? Okay.
I would love you to send me some
I was
pictures.
gonna say the same thing.
If it hasn't so late, we'll do that. I'll get this over to you by next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? How about government representative comments? Who's up?
Jim Dugan, City of St. Augustine. Really quick, we have one additional derelict vessel that I found out about a week and a half ago. Fortunately, it was right across from St. Augustine Marine. apparently the owner had passed away about 3 or 4 weeks earlier. The boat was started listing, and we got permission from our police department that we can pull it, it was derelict, sea tow, brought it over to the yard, to the St. Augustine Marine for free. So I'm asking, for no higher than $390, which would be the pullout fee and the destruction fee. So it's one boat that we didn't have to pay for anyone to tow it over, since it was so close, it was less than a 5-minute job for Chris. So that's all I have for you today.
What's the amount?
$390.
That's what I told you.
We approved.
That's tow and destruction fee.
Additional discussion?
Tell them destruction fees for $390,
No, pulling it out and destruction fee.
for $390.
Right.
That's the total cost to us for pulling it out and destruction.
Yes.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye. Can I ask you one question though about the Las Brisas that's on the coastal, just to the north and west of Fish Island? I sent Officer Harvey that someone died, Glenn died on that boat a couple years back. And it's twisting, and it's being treated, I guess, by the city as an abandoned vessel. His daughters did not take ownership or anything of it, so it's abandoned. It is twisted so bad on the anchor lines, it's actually pulling the bow under. So we're within any minute now, it's gonna go. But you don't have any word at all when that might be rolled out.
I don't, no, not top of my head, I don't know, sorry, I don't know, maybe have anything.
It's under so much pressure, I sent that.
Right, and it may be on our list already, because we have, I think, 4 boats now, not including the one I just talked about, that we're gonna be either pulling or destroying or shortly.
So
And
Officer
that could
Harvey
be,
may
I'm
have-
not sure.
I think Lieutenant said Officer Harvey is working it, so it may be on that list.
What's his name of it again?
The name of the boat is Las Brisas, and even if, and I wouldn't mind doing it on the cold, but even if somebody just, the anchor lines, there's 2, and they twist, and they're twisted all the way down, well under the water, bringing the bow down, so you can't even see the awful growth on it at this point, but it's about, I'm surprised we didn't lose it in this last blow, but
Right.
I figured it'd be over on Fish Island Marine when it comes.
Yeah, okay, I'll check with Officer Harvey.
And it may be on the list already, I was
It
just
could
letting
be.
you know that it's really in a critical position, that's all.
And looking at the one out there at the bridge. Well, that was something that Officer Harvey was able to find a loophole in, being a safety issue, when the boat parade was going on, people were walking on it. So we had Chris, pardon me?
Somebody lit on it.
Well, yes, but it technically wasn't his boat, it was a registration issue. It's sitting down our solid waste yard, and, we have to wait the appropriate 90 days, I think we're down to like 25 days or 26 days. But it's out and sitting out there waiting for the time frame to run out, and then we can destroy it.
Can I ask you a question about that boat? The person who sold it swears that it is not in his name anymore. And so you're telling me that they didn't take, you gotta take that whole thing off the title and send, so it did not change names as far as the law is concerned?
Correct.
And you, okay. What makes you mad?
He swears he sold it, but there's no
You put it
paper
on
trail,
there,
no
I'm saying
nothing.
the next day, you still own the boat, you put it right over there with your fancy name, you just pull it right off the grid, I just wondered, because he's told everybody he does not own it, when in fact, apparently that's what.
Yeah, I just have one more question, sort of unrelated. Last month, Josh, told us about the medallion program that the city used to run under the
Pilot
state's, anchoring and mooring pilot program. That expired in 2017 or 2018 or something?
16 or 17,
So they
somewhere around
didn't
there.
renew it, so that's
Right.
kind of dead in the water.
Right.
So you guys don't have the authority.
We don't have the authority to make him pull anchor and come in and get inspected. I wish we did, because that was one of the great programs that we really liked.
Yeah. Was there any reason why they decided not to renew it? Did they talk, was there like a postmortem that they talked about?
I'll give you the reason later.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Carl,
Don't you leave reason. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Who's next?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Carl Blue with the Florida Inland Navigation District. I just stopped by, I don't have a lot here, but just wanted to stop by and check in with you guys. Speaking of derelict boats, in our last final board meeting on our consent agenda, we had a grant application from the city of St. Augustine for abandoned boats, and which we approved. We usually get probably 4 or 5 abandoned boat grant applications on our consent agenda every month. But anyway, I brought this, and I'll hand this out real quick because I just wanted you guys to see a visual example of how powerful your participation is in getting rid of abandoned boats and taking advantage of the Vine Grant Program. But let me just hand this out real quick.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to show you here, basically, this is an application where the city, I think, has already moved these 3 boats. And they came to you and requested $3,477.19. Fine contributed $10,000 and $10,431.59. So I just wanted to show you how important your participation is in this program and other programs when you get involved in these grant applications. This is only a 25% match. So anyway, I just thought you might find it interesting to actually see the numbers and see the result. Obviously, this got 3 boats removed that were obviously a hazard to the navigation and probably the environment as well. Other than that, it is grant season. I see on the agenda, I'm going to talk to you about a fine grant application. And I think the county is working on something right now. I don't think they're ready to talk about anything yet. But, our deadline for fill those fine grants, I think it's March 28th this year. So, not a lot of time. But anyway, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was a fantastic program. I think there was 5. Obviously it was managed by FWC, and the goal was to develop a template for the entire state that addressed anchoring and that was fair to the boater as well as fair to property owners and taxpayers. Of the 5 cities selected for the pilot program, the consensus statewide was the city of St. Augustine had the best ordinance and the best program. It went through I forget how many years it ran. 5 years.
Then it's extended for additional.
Yeah, and it was working great. And
Can I say something about that? But I really need to project with the working great.
Well,
You guys
that
stopped
was
enforcing
what I
that
heard.
after the federal lawsuit, and never wrote one ticket on that, where they would send people out, and they would literally tell the voters, I can't enforce it. So I realized it was in fact, we thought it was great, we left it on the thing, it was used to intimidate people, but it was never again enforced,
Okay.
because it couldn't be.
I was told it was great. I was over that. But to answer the chair's question, the folks in South Florida that weren't part of the pilot program, primarily Broward County, I think, were pushing very hard to have something happen quick and to deal with abandoned boats and to deal with the anchoring issue. And they actually went to the legislature and did their political clout. They got their own ordinance adopted. So it sort of kind of just totally undercut the idea of the pilot program developing a standard ordinance for the state of Florida. So at this point, I think we are going down a different path where FWC is going to tweak the existing statutes in order to try to make it better. That's what I was saying.
$401. Of the sheriff's department overtime, of the $25,000 budgeted, we've spent $4,280. The May Street pothole fill was $7,940. The St. Johns County Fire Rescue communication upgrade, $90,000. That was put in the wrong line. Okay, the nav equipment was $13,550.
That was the radiation.
Oh, that's the radiation, I'm sorry, that's the radiation, and nav is below it. The radiation was $13,550. In the State Board of Administration Fund A, it was $23,173. Now, I'm gonna get ready and move that out because that is no longer, a government, they don't view it as a government, account anymore. So I'm gonna take it out, and put it back in like the money market account, where it's gonna earn something. It earns, $3, but it's not doing anything. The operating account has $457,147 in it. The money market account has $1,111,000, and the reserve account has $1,500,000. There is approximately $3,091,000 available. The taxes budgeted, we budgeted $621,283. We've received $527,649, and we're expecting $93,000 to come in. That's the balance.
The unspecified marine project, is that something
Some things that are,
total of different things?
yeah, it would be on the general ledger, and if you look at the general ledger that I send you, if you look on the, okay? If you look underneath it's usually the bottom where it's like district projects, and it's just not a district project that was specified or committed, but you'll find, so I would sometimes put it in there, but you'll see it on the general ledger, you get that.
Can I ask one other question for you? And that is who was our bank and where are they located?
Who?
The bank that we use.
Oh, ours are, with the exception of State Board of Administration, which is in Tallahassee, all the other banks are here. Center State, which used to be Bank of St. Augustine, is Center State, South State Bank now. Yeah. 'Cause-
Center State, down in Port Florida. So but the money's not there in some bank in Davenport, Florida.
No, Center State is here.
Okay, so our bank is in.
It's all local. Yeah, I mean, the main headquarters might be somewhere else, but our money is local.
Any other questions on the Secretary Treasurer's report?
I have a question. My question is on the general ledger that you sent to us every month.
Yeah.
And is there any way to show the split? I think I've asked this before, because I see October the 19th, Clay L. legal expense, and it has an amount. And underneath that, it has excess fees, 5,000, and another one split, 9,000.
I don't know what you're looking at. I have to see. Let me see. Which one is 9,000? Where are you looking for 9,000? Oh, that's a deposit.
Okay.
That's a deposit from, because you see that as, this is excess fees we received from this.
But it looks like it's under Clay Meeks.
No, it's not. No.
No, but is there any way to show what the split is?
Well, no, because there's nothing under deposit. Like here's the same thing for
Okay.
600.
Okay.
It's just a deposit,
Okay.
and that's it. This
Okay.
is just anything
So
like
when you
that.
see split, that's a deposit.
It's deposit,
Okay.
because what they are, we put in there like they have, commission, the taxing, the money,
Right.
the revenue is, you have to pay a commission. You have to pay commission fees, and it's a large amount, really. So that comes off, that's just the balance, that's
Okay.
not the,
Thanks for explaining. I
yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah.
Good. Next is approval of minutes from the December 21st regular meeting. Does anyone have any modifications to those minutes?
I didn't get the minutes.
page 3. Under engineering report number 10, go down there and it says, in which the ACE suggesting a 5-year extension instead of a 2-year extension sought on the River Haven permit. I think it would be clear if we changed that to Stone Haven.
That's a good catch. That's all. Does anybody else have any?
I didn't get minutes. I'm looking at my email now, my regular, and my commission email, and I did not get minutes. Well, if you look at my email.
No, because I saw that Clay had sent them to everybody, so I didn't
You're welcome to look at my email account.
Oh, no, I didn't. Clay, did you sent to all of them?
I sent a single email with the minutes to every commissioner.
Okay.
One got them,
What day?
This morning,
it was
last night, 6:45 or something.
Again, we have a problem.
Well, Sandy's email is not St. Augustine Port. Hers is Commissioner Flowers. That's her email.
Send it to the same, port address.
Have you got,
I got everything from you.
okay, but no, did you get last month's minutes too?
I did on the day of the meeting, but I just didn't receive it at all.
All right, let me,
You're welcome to look at my email.
oh, no, as soon as I get back, I will.
We'll look into resolving that.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I'll move to modify the minutes as Tom suggested, otherwise to adopt them. Have a second on that? All right, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Abstained, probably. Great, next up is engineering report.
Just got two very quick updates. The first is I handed over to Elise earlier before the meeting started.
I lost it. No, I didn't.
Small thumb drive has a little bit over 50 gigabytes of drone video on it, as requested by Commissioner Flowers. There's 64 different files, and it extends from June of 2015 through September of 2021. So various documents space. The file name tells you the date. And then the other update is I mentioned last meeting that I did hear back from the Corps on the request for the extension for our Summer Haven permit, and that they had suggested reaching out to the county and seeing if they wanted to do that. I did that. They did say that they were interested, so I have drafted a letter, submitted that on their behalf. So what's going to happen now is the Corps will be, they have to do consultation with Fish and Wildlife Service as part of this extension request. They'll be able to do both those permits at the same time. Should help expedite things.
I'm sorry, I missed something. I didn't hear that well. What are we permitting?
You have to speak real loud.
This is the renewal of the Summer Haven, the Army Corps of Engineers Summer Haven permit. He's just saying that the county wants to get in on that renewal, so there'll be a coordinated renewal of that permit. For both
I just
permits.
didn't get what was my permit.
That's all I have.
Right. Next up is old business, no old business, so we're on to new business. Fine grant dredge, Sullivan local agreement, Jim Piggott.
Commissioners, Jim Piggott, City of St. Augustine. Thank you. If you remember, back in May and June, I mentioned to you all that we'd like to do a line item in the budget for the continuation of our fine grant application. This will be the third of our 3 series grant applications. The first 2 have already been approved. The budget was approved with the line item of $50,000, and we're going to be applying to fine for the third grant, and $150,000 from fine, which is a total of $200,000. When and if this is approved, we'll have $600,000, and we plan on dredging starting next December or January timeframe, depending on the availability of Grants Diversified, who is under contract. And they said they will be honoring their cubic yard price of $45. After this one dredge, we'll have to rebid that, which is no problem, but I think we're getting a pretty good deal with the cost of fuel going up and everything else. The grant needs to be in, as Carl Blow mentioned, by the March 28th, so this will give us time to take this interlocal, put it on our commission agenda, along with a resolution that our commission needs to sign. We put the package together, sit down with Commissioner Blow from Fine, go over it, and then we'll submit it to Fine. In June timeframe, Corey, who was here at the last meeting, will go down to Cocoa Beach and defend our application. In the past couple of years, I think he messed up because he was second last year, not first. But we usually finish in the top 3, I think, for the dredging of Salt Run. I will throw a little caveat in here, talking to Commissioner Blow. There's $700,000 that we have, or Fine has for this area. Not sure what the other projects will be, but let's just say we only have $500,000 on the table. If this would have to be done at the next meeting, I could bring a second grant application, which would be an additional $50,000. So that'd be a total of $400,000 for this one, be $800,000 total, it's just a thought. And that should get the whole channel done, not just the high points. So, but for now, I'd like to move forward with this, so we can get this on our commission's agenda and approve it.
Mr. Lee, can I ask you a question about this particular subject? And that is, when we issue a grant, and I guess we're going to be issuing a grant, I was told that we don't have to get a grant application for this. If we're issuing a grant, the grant application is the first defense of the taxpayer to figure out where the money went. Can you explain why we don't need a grant application for this grant?
You do not need a grant application for this because you haven't required a grant application with any budgeting or grant.
Okay, well, that's incorrect. We've done lots of things wrong. We know that. So again, if we're issuing a grant, I need a legal answer as to why, not because we haven't done it before. Mr. Piggott has never written a grant application for anything, including police boats.
Sandy, the reason we're going to need a grant application, we need a grant application when we're just sending a check out the door, because there's no other paperwork behind it, right? As you said, you need documentary trail to protect the taxpayer.
Right.
We have a detailed interlocal agreement, legal memorandum.
Well, now we get those when we did the police boat, we had an interlocal agreement too. The police boat, that requires a grant application.
Right, but look at other budget line items like police overtime. They don't need a grant application every time they get a check from us for police overtime.
Are those considered grants? Or is the police overtime?
I think we're getting hung up on the word grant.
It's
but
budgeted.
This is a budget line item that we already agreed on, and we also have a relatively detailed legal
Okay, I know
document.
about put on the budget,
executed
but I did object, and I was told we were gonna talk about it later, but we didn't get to doing that. So let me ask a few questions now, since we're asked to approve it. The kind of bucket dredging was fake everywhere here. What they did over at Milano Beach recently, I watched it, is, and you lose 80% of your silt. When you go through in a bucket, you're blind dredging, 80% of the silt is what the silt is lost. Nobody else would do it like that. Most of the time when they dredge like that, they have those dredge companies go back and clean it up. Because bucket dredging is so dirty, the walls fall in, and you have to dredge very soon again, and now that silt is settling somewhere else, and sometimes it's toxic. So, and also, like, what about a pre-dredge survey? How do you know do we have a pre-dredge survey?
Channel engineer will do a pre-dredge survey and a post-dredge survey.
Okay, can we get a pre-dredge survey on that so we know what we're actually getting? Why we need to be dredged? That would be nice to have it in the records. Also, since the sunshine law changed last July, every project we have, within 90 days of it being completed, we need all the records in our office. So it would be nice if that started happening.
So what you need from us is for us to vote on approving, signing this interlocal, or did we approve it in the budget process? Do we need to approve it explicitly now? Clay, is that?
Yeah, it's noticed on the agenda, they just take a vote just so it's clear for their commission.
And then if you would sign those 3 copies and your attorney would sign it, give them a lease, I'll swing by your office tomorrow or the next day and pick them up.
Great.
So we're not taking a vote on it.
I think we are taking a vote, right? Public comment? Yeah, the public comment was earlier, and there'll be public comment again after.
Oh, here we go.
We've been through this. Does, you're still wrong. Okay. I would move that we go ahead and approve this third in the series of $50,000 grants for salt run dredging for the city. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, that's 4 in favor, 1 opposed. The next item on the agenda,
Three in favor.
excuse me, sorry, 3 in favor, 1 opposed.
If I could just ask one quick question. If there's extra money applied, I'm not sure what the county is gonna apply for, or if anyone else is gonna apply, would you consider want me to come back for an additional 50,000 next month, or no?
So the idea being that if they will only give you that extra money if we match, right?
Correct.
Is that, no, go ahead.
Excuse me, thank you, Commissioner.
Carl, state your name.
Carl Wood, Florida Inland Navigation District. Yes, sir, Mr. Commissioner, basically, it appears that there'll be about $700,000 available for the entities in St. Thomas County this year for this program. And, of course, my goal is to try to, work it out with my fellow government folks here that we bring all that money back to St. Thomas County. One beauty of a dredging project like this is it has some flexibility versus, say, building a boat ramp where you have to have, hard number, X amount of dollars to build a ramp. If you reduce that amount, then the ramp doesn't get built. Whereas with dredging, there is some flexibility there based on the amount of money, and basically $45 a cubic yard, which in this particular situation is, I think, a heck of a deal, because what we're seeing in the industry, like everywhere else, is significant inflation in the cost of dredging, and the fact that Branch Diversified has agreed to hold their price is pretty amazing to me. So, as far as the dredging grant itself, there is flexibility that if the county comes in with some great projects, and all of a sudden I've got, $800,000 or $750,000 total of grant projects, we can shave 50 off of dredging and not kill the project, whereas if it was a boat ramp and you cut a significant amount of money out of, say, a boat grant, it can kill the whole project. So does that make sense?
Not to me.
Well, yeah, so you might be able to move more material inside your roads because they're making more money available. But if that money is available, you only get it if we match it. That's
right, yeah, because this particular grant is unlike most of them, it's not, it's a 75%, 25% grant, whereas you're only 25%. Like a boat grant is a 50-50. So it's
Great Lakes is out of Chicago, so we have a Chicago company coming down to do our dredging. Great Lakes is out of Chicago.
You mean Branch Diversified?
Who's doing it?
Branch Diversified is the company that's been working for the city, and they're out of Jacksonville.
Branch Diversified, I was told Great Lakes this last year, so they're not doing that contract this year?
They haven't worked for the city. I think Great Lakes might have done something for the county.
With something for the county? Okay.
Not water boat ramp, water beach.
Okay, gotcha.
So
It's
anyway.
called something diversified,
Branch.
and they're gonna come and bring this old bucket dredging down there and make a mess. The turbidity is awful. Kills the grass, there's no light to get through until all that settles down. It settles somewhere else, we have to dredge. So how come we can't get them to bring in the proper equipment? Most of the time, when they dredge with that bucket, the government makes them come clean it up. Because it makes such a mess in the channel. So why can't we get somebody to come and do this properly?
All I can tell you, Commissioner, is that the operations are monitored and regulated by the regulatory agencies,
Who would that be?
DEP primarily, right?
The DEP, they issue the permits, but apparently they don't come to watch the dredging, because when I saw it, it was on a boat ramp. If they knew it was, they were pulling, how much of that was going right back in, again, 80% right back into the water of toxic material, pulled out by an excavator on a barge. And you told us it was gonna go into a hopper and be taken up to Jacksonville. And it was put into a short truck and taken up to West Bend. But most of it went into the river. I've watched it for days after days.
I can't comment on the county.
I called the truck, they didn't go, the hopper came one day, it sat empty, left, and every bit of that was put in a little tiny truck for $200,000, but we paid Chicago to come do it. I watch them, we get the points. And these companies are just tied directly to our tax dollars, nobody's inspecting them. Who's gonna do the inspections? That's all one.
As far as regulatory.
When they finish with the dredging, who's gonna do the inspections?
Well, as Mr. Pickett said, the way the contract is paid is based on the post-dredge survey. So they do a pre-dredge
Right, but we were
survey.
getting post-grad survey down there in Summerhaven.
Uh,
But even we know if it was a big joke, because we know we did not get, they didn't deliver the contract, everybody knows, lives down there, brought us down there to show us that. So is it gonna be that kind of post-grad survey? I'm serious, Carl. You know that this is going on. A survey, it needs to be independent, not done by cousin Larry. And we need to know what it really means, not somebody saying, I took 16 truckloads of sand away. That's not a
The
survey.
surveys I've seen have been done by licensed surveying firms.
Well, the Summerhaven survey we got from Taylor was, I took some truckloads of sand away, and cousin Larry said so.
Well, I'll defer to Taylor.
I know.
I wouldn't.
Clay, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, just a question for Carl that I think might help for consideration. The 700,000 that's delegated to this district for this year, is that something that if it isn't used will carry forward, or would that
No,
just be
sir,
lost?
it does not carry forward. And
That's what I wanted to clarify.
that's the question that's been asked a lot, and I see that policy is not going to change. So no, it's nothing to carry forward. Now, once the grant's gone through our process and been scored and is in our budget, then yeah, you've got a number of years to actually complete the work, and we have a procedure where you can that period can be extended for certain reasons. So, but no, the 700, I mean, it goes from budget year to budget year. Right, thank you. I hope that answered.
So do you want me to bring something back in case, or no?
I mean, should at least let us know, yeah, I don't think it would hurt
Okay.
to find out if that additional money becomes available.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. That takes us to agenda item E under new business, Jason Hara from the U.S. Army Corps.
Hey, good afternoon, Commission. Jason Harrell from the Army Corps of Engineers and the Jacksonville District Corps of Engineers. I'll give you guys, Commissioner Flowers asked me to attend, give a brief update on the federal projects that we have within St. Johns County. So if you'll bear with me for a couple minutes, I'll kind of work our way through. I'll start in the southern portion of the county and work our way north. Starting off with the St. Johns Shore Protection Project, which is St. Augustine Beach. That essentially goes from Pope Road down near Bermuda Way. It's about a 3-mile project of beach renourishment every 5 years or so. The last time we did that project was in 2018. So 2023 would be the time frame to do it. However, with the recent nor'easter we had from 5 to 7 November, it really took a toll on the beaches. We have a program in the Corps that allows us, if a storm rises to what we call an extraordinary event, by means of wind and wave attack, etc., on an existing federal project, we have an opportunity to request emergency, what we call FCCE or FCCE emergency funds to restore that beach at 100% federal expense. So we have some criteria we have to go through to determine if that storm was indeed extraordinary. We believe that it was. We've written a report that was turned in to our office in Atlanta on the 31st of December, and that report justifies full replacement of the beach at 100% federal cost. So it won't cost the county anything. Their share is typically about 20%, so they don't have to pay anything for that project.
What was the time frame for that big?
So the report was complete on 31 December. It usually takes about a month or two to get out of Atlanta. Then it goes to Washington. We have a 3-star general, General Spellman, that will sign off that he agrees with the findings of the report. March timeframe, we should get a thumbs up. Take about 6 months worth of permitting, design, etc. to get complete. So by the winter of 2022, we hope to be putting sand on the beach. Knock on wood.
Winter 2022.
Winter 2022, yes ma'am. For this particular event, we will not be using the inlet complex because we took about 1.3 million yards of sand out of the inlet for Bolano Beach, that I'll talk about in a minute. So for this particular event, we're going to use an offshore source about 3 miles offshore in federal waters. It's called S1 or SAM1. So we'll be pumping that sand. A hopper dredge will go out to that area, suck sand up into the belly of the ship, come and connect to a pipe, and then run it directly onto the beach. Again, from Pope Road, 3 miles south.
You could use that sand on that big sandbar for the other mouth of the inlet, that huge sandbar.
You're talking about, right, if you're going at Porpoise Point, right on the left there, as you make the bend going north?
No, long, if you're leaving, going out the inlet, and right in, turn Salt Run, just to the south of it, there's that huge sandbar.
Very touchy subject. So if you try to get sand that's that close proximity to a shoreline, a lot of coastal engineers and stuff have a concern because it changes the dynamics of the waves, the way they interact with the shore. And when you change the way the waves interact with the shore, you can have additional erosion quicker for Anastasia Island, Anastasia Park, etc. So going 3 miles out, you don't have the type of impacts you can have of removing a huge sandbar that is dissipating waves before they're hitting the beach. You take that out, now those waves can be hitting the beach a lot closer, faster erosion rates, etc. So you can wind up getting into a mitigation thing. Yes, you can have that sand if you mitigate for it somewhere else. So it gets into a whole issue.
Just watch that sandbar get bigger and bigger and bigger.
But it may be kept that in that wall, what you're saying.
It could be, yeah. And that's one of the big concerns. But good news, the winter of 2022, we should be putting sand on St. Augustine Beach. Several-month project. It could take upwards of 6 months. There'll be much more details on that. We'll have public meetings. I'll keep you guys apprised. We'll work with the city of St. Augustine Beach as that comes forward. Again, not firm yet. We have to have that approved in Washington. But assuming that it is, we'll be completing construction or starting construction in the winter of 2022. Any questions about the St. Augustine project? All right, moving our way north, St. Augustine Inlet. As you guys know, it's a federal channel. If we have shoaling concerns that are impacting the safe navigation of vessels, we can dredge the federal navigation channel and place that sand either in the near shore, on Anastasia Beach, etc. We do surveys every year, and those are posted on our core hydrodynamic website. Anybody can go out and look at those. If you don't have the address, I can give it to you. We do those annually. As of right now, there's nothing impacting the current depth that would require us to go out and do a maintenance dredging event of the channel itself.
It's looking good, actually.
Looks good, yeah. The depths are good right now. Yes, ma'am. Any questions on the inlet? All right, moving our way to Porpoise Point. At the request of St. Johns County, we did a continuing authority study. We call it a CAP study. Due to the continued erosion of Porpoise Point with the potential of loss of homes, of loss of road infrastructure, etc., the county came to us and asked for us to do a study to try to fix Porpoise Point. We were about 40 to 50% through that study. We had determined that building some kind of wave energy devices to stop some of that wave attack that we just talked about on St. Augustine Beach. We're going to put in a series of what we call terminal groins along Porpoise Point to try to fix that.
Is that along that point out here?
Right at the point, yes, ma'am. You'll see a sandbar there, and then 6 months later, it's gone. It's back, and it's gone. So we're going to try to stabilize Porpoise Point. We went through a series of reviews. We came up with a pretty good recommended plan of putting some groins in there to dissipate that wave energy. We thought it would kind of stabilize the area. That area is what we call a Coastal Barrier Resource Act area, COBRA zone, and that is managed by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. So COBRA areas have very delicate information, very delicate requirements of what you can and cannot do with the use of federal dollars. COBRA basically says if you're in a COBRA zone, it's kind of an environmentally sensitive area. We don't want you to put any kind of hard structures there. We want to protect it, etc. However, you have the opportunity to make a case that if it's urgent, compelling, loss of life, loss of infrastructure, you can make an argument to get an exception to the COBRA policy and place those features that we're talking about, the groins. We made our case with the Fish and Wildlife Service all the way up to Washington, D.C., and ultimately we were declined the opportunity to put the groins in by Fish and Wildlife. They did not believe that our exception rose to the point of allowing us to do that. So what does that mean? That means that the federal governments, i.e. the Corps of Engineers, cannot complete that study and use federal dollars to cost share in the construction of the groins, but it does not prohibit a county body from going forward with that project themselves and doing it outside the core purview. So the county, that will be up to them to decide if they want to pursue that. But we, as the Corps, we gave it a college try. We had many meetings with Fish and Wildlife, and they were just not willing to budge.
But it's because it's this Cobra area?
Coastal Barrier Resource Act area, yes, ma'am.
What's that mean exactly? They think that it's critical habitat?
It's a critical habitat area that, and the gentleman from Taylor or others could probably give you a lot better information than I can, but essentially it's an environmentally protected area that prohibits what kind of structures can be built, what kind of improvements you can do, et cetera. So it's, you can look it up on Fish and Wildlife. It's a whole list of information.
But that qualifies as Cobra.
It does.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
We talked about Portless Pond. Are you talking about basically from the jetties, not north of the jetties?
No, ma'am.
South of the
No,
jetties?
sir. South of the jetty around the bend, coming into the inlet.
Okay.
Yes.
So that just stays the way it is?
Yes.
I see.
Yeah, and so we had a pretty robust plan to put some groins in there that would reduce a lot of that energy there, allow that sand to build and not go away, but Fish and Wildlife just there, it's hard enough to get hard structures built anyhow, rocks, et cetera, for turtle crawl, et cetera. It's very difficult with the state of Florida. You add in the Fish and Wildlife, it compounds it tremendously. So they just were not willing to budge, and they actually gave it to us in writing that we will not allow an exception.
Yeah, there's actually some lots of project out there.
There is, yeah,
They're totally in the middle of it.
that's right. Yes, sir. Any other questions on Porpoise? All right, moving our way north of the inlet, we have the Volano CSRM project, Coastal Storm Risk Management. That's another beach project. St. John, St. Augustine is called shore protection. That's the old school language we had in the 80s and 90s. They said, no, that's no good. We want to call it Coastal Storm Risk Management. So that's the new buzzword, CSRM. That project goes from Serenata Club, right in the middle of Serenata Club, roughly 3 miles south. So this is where that project ends. The initial construction of that beach project with the building of a berm, and the berm is where we lay our towels and our chairs, and a 15-foot dune was completed back in May of 2021. We put vegetation on that 3-mile dune. Beautiful project, looked very good. However, we've since been hit with 3 nor'easters that have not only taken out the berm, but taken out about 50% of the dune that we built. So that's the bad news. The good news is the same report that we wrote for FCCE money for St. Augustine emergency funds is exactly the same for Volano. It qualifies for 100% federal replacement at the Corps' discretion. So that report was justified that we will restore that beach in 100% federal funding once it's approved by General Spellman in Washington. So that'll be 100%. That's really good news for the county because the cost share is lopsided on that one. It's actually about 75 to 80% non-federal,
Yeah.
and about 20% federal due to parking and access restrictions.
So this time, the county's off the hook on.
They're all off the hook on that one and St. Augustine if these reports are approved. That's caveat.
And any time frame at all on how long this would, general spell that might take, or?
Usually it's about a 60-day process. So we set it up on 31 December. So by the end of February, early March, we should get a signature, which will release the money for us to do design and permitting, and then to award construction contracts in the winter of 2022. This one's on the exact same schedule as St.
So
Augustine.
both of them might hit 2020.
Yes, ma'am.
A lot of work you've been doing.
A lot of work. So this project will also use an offshore source about 3 miles in federal waters called N3 or Nancy 3. So for either one of these events, we're not pulling any sand out of the inlet because back in May of 21, we pulled about 1.3 million yards of sand. We've got a huge shoal where the big cross is. There was a huge shoal there. I mean, I drove over the bridge today. You can't see it. It's gone. We took all that sand
Yeah,
out.
that was real sand.
We took sand out of Salt Run, right on the bend of Salt Run. We took sand out of the inlet. We took sand right off the corner of Porpoise Point. So we removed about 1.31 million cubic yards of sand using the hopper dredge. So it's great work. So,
Hopper dredge is great.
yeah, and so that was a really successful project. 3 nor'easters really caused us a lot of problems. So we will be restoring that beach 100% federal.
Explain to me exactly where you get the sand up there. The ship goes out and sucks the sand up, and then how does it get to the beach?
Yeah, so let me back up. I should have said hopper for Volano. So for Volano, anytime you're typically working in an inlet itself, you're using what they call a cutter suction dredge. So a cutter suction dredge is grinding the sand, getting it into a pipe. A floating pipe is coming out of the inlet over the jetties and going north. And so that, as that ship moves, it's consistently connected to a pipe, okay? A hopper dredge is typically something used more offshore or in a big federal channel. It sucks the sand up into the belly of the ship till it gets to a certain draft. It goes to where a pipe, we call them pipe corridors, connects to the pipe, and then a mixture of sand and water is pumped onto the beach where bulldozers move that sand around and build it to a certain template.
Was the dredge merged in a hopper dredge or just a cutter section?
The cutter section dredge that was here for the Milano project was Great Lakes Dredge and Dock, and it was called the Ohio. It's actually the biggest cutter section dredge in the United States. Because Carl and others wanted us to get some sand in the IWW north of the bridge, and actually the Ohio wouldn't fit underneath the pier, so we couldn't get there. So it's a really big vessel. So any questions on Milano? All right, the last thing to report is we have a brand new study. It's about 6 months underway that goes from the middle of Serenata Club all the way up to the Duval County line. And that is at the request of the St. Johns County Board of Commissioners. They're the sponsor. They asked us to look at coastal erosion from Serenata Club all the way to the Duval County line. And so that's a brand new study. It's going to take about 3 years to complete. So 2024, the study will be completed, and it will make a recommendation of some type of coastal erosion protection. Typically, that is beach nourishment. That is the, as we talked about, hard structures, et cetera, is really hard to sell with the agency. So it could recommend something like beach renourishment for the remaining portion of South Ponte Vedra all the way to the Duval County line. So 2024 to complete the study, design and permitting 2025, construction of that project 2026. And that's all I have, subject to questions.
Maybe a stupid question, but, this is happening over and over and over again, so how do you get to the point where you don't expect the sand to be washed away again? Is it just going to be something that happens again?
Yeah, I see the articles on Facebook every time we do these. A lot of people say, "What a waste of money!" Taking sand 3 miles off on the beach and it washes away in 2 or 3 years, etc. But people don't realize it's amazing. 23 beaches in the state of Florida are all man-made, including Duval, Nassau, St. John's, Flagler Beach is getting ready to be another one. Every one all the way through Miami, Pinellas County, etc. So all of those projects are having sand pumped somewhere either from an inlet and put onto the beach. And what people don't realize is specifically the people in Milano, when they open their patio door and they walk out now and they see a vertical cliff of sand and say, it's gone. Well, that's exactly what it's supposed to do. It washed itself out. That dune sacrificed itself to protect your house. You still have a house that's standing. But a lot of people don't understand that because it's not as robust as a seawall or whatever. But yeah, so there is criticism about beach renourishment. It is, however, the proven alternative that we have found that addresses all the agencies' concerns, and there's a bunch of them: National Marine Fishery, BOEM, EPA, Fish and Wildlife, DEP, Fish and Wildlife Service. You have to find something that all these agencies will agree with, and typically right now, beach renourishment is that alternative.
Mr. Harrell, when you put all that sand up there, then it gets washed out. When they did the inlet, they came with that dredge motor, and I was on there, and it was fun to do the tour, watch them put it on there, and then they took it around the water, almost went on the beach, and dropped it all down. And they explained to me, well, they didn't want to put it up on the beach, they're trying to like build, so it's tiered, so when you put that out there, it gets washed away. Is it still in a sense helping us because it's still, even though it's gone down, it's still from there somewhere providing some natural barrier?
Yeah, and to answer your question too, you walk out on Duval Beach, it seems like you walk for miles to get to the water. What people don't realize, it took us several years to get that bench built. That project started back in the 60s. So, I mean, it took every 5 years, Duval's been renourished since 1968, I believe. So it takes a lot of time to get sand in the system, we call it. And the system isn't just what you walk on with your bare feet. There's sand sitting offshore that is also dissipating wave energy. And that sand, even though it washed off Milano, it's sitting in what we call the near shore, and it will make its way back, back on the shore over time. So it's there, it's just not visible to make it out. So that's all the update I have, unless there's any other questions.
Can I ask you a question about Summer?
Absolutely.
What's any plans at all? One thing I think about Summer Acres is when you had the Atlantic Southeastern Coast Survey, and I'm sorry, we had a meeting that day, I couldn't stay the whole time, and there was a conversation about, and I see this happening so you can bring the seawall up or put in, I understand why owners are doing it. But, isn't it true that the more of that we put up, I think we talked briefly about the end of Pine Street, where there's a fishing wall in Hospital Creek. And the church, you know, they put up their seawall and went way down in the ground. I think we've got several more that are, you know, raised it, so it's just worse and worse. It's really bad now. So what's gonna happen to that one half section approximately a mile of Summer Haven that's left unprotected?
Right, so seawalls are, so for instance, the problem with the core studies a lot of times, it takes us about 3 years to get to a study. And then a year to do design, a year to do construction. That's not even, that's assuming a seamless flow of money. There's not an issue with, you know, a presidency term that ends, if something's not favored in the next presidency like it was in the previous administration. So assuming a flawless effort, it's about 5 years before you see a grain of sand from the day that the sponsor sends us a letter for a project. So for Milano, they went through Hurricane Matthew, they went through Hurricane Irma, they heard us, we're coming, the Corps coming, and eventually they got fed up and started putting in seawalls. You know, as a homeowner, I get it. You want to protect your property.
You mean the property owners started?
Yeah, they started putting up seawalls, and they need an emergency order and allow the seawalls to be put in. What people don't realize is, yes, you're protecting your home, but when you put in a vertical seawall, the way that waves interact with that seawall vertically now, it drastically reduces the amount of sand that's seaward of that seawall. And you can visibly see it if you stand on your dune stairs and you look at a beach that either has a natural slanted dune without a seawall versus a seawall, you'll see a drastic difference in the sand elevation over time of the seawall. And it's visible up in New Jersey and some of those areas. You see that, yes, they're all protected, but they have no beach at high tides.
Pearls right near the walls, all around, Vegas shores, so you could travel real high.
Right, so yes, it protects your home, but it drastically, removes a lot of sand from the beach.
So Summer Haven is just in trouble.
So Summer Haven's not a federal project, as you know, it's never been issued as a federal project. I've had many discussions with the condominium complex down there, I'm trying to remember the name, the first one as you go north, I can't remember the name of the road. Summer House. And they've reached out to me and said, hey, we'd love to be included in a new federal project. We know you're doing one at Ponte Vedra now, you're doing a new study. What gives? What can we do? Every single study that we have has to have a willing sponsor. So the county or somebody has to step up and say, this is the problem we're having in Summer Haven. This is the area we want you to study, and we can look at it. Now, I've told them, we always have to be kind of obvious and be upfront with people. Core beach projects are derived from benefits for protecting roadways or protecting homes. Okay, if we show that damages to homes and roads from significant storms creates a lot of damages, those turn into benefits versus cost. For every dollar we spend, we've got to have a dollar in return, right? So there's not a lot of infrastructure down in that particular area. And I caution Summer Haven and others, one thing that we actually look at when we do a study is not only beaches, but we look at buyouts. Look at buyouts, property. And so you very well could run into a situation where buying X amount of properties is cheaper than doing 50 years of beach nourishment.
Right.
And so you get into a whole offering of fair market value for houses with relocation expenses, etc. So a lot of people that want to study, when they realize what the recommended plan becomes, they kind of back off and say, wait a minute, I didn't know you were buying my house and tearing my house down.
Oh, it's part of the study.
Right.
We don't know how the study's going to go out.
Right, so I always caution people, careful what you ask for, but if somebody wanted us to take a hard look at Summer Haven, we could do that with a willing sponsor, with a letter of commitment, of financial commitment.
Is it possible still to do that under the PAC program for that little area?
It's potential, you know, once we got the first step is getting a letter from somebody willing to be a sponsor. Studies typically are $3 million, split 50-50, 1.5 million each. You have to have a sponsor that says, yes, we're willing to participate, yes, we're willing to participate financially.
So if with that PAC program, and I'm just going off on memory here, I believe Mr. Suggs said it was they would cover the first $100,000 of the study.
Correct.
And then would be on, that's just of the study.
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then the rest would be
Yeah,
a 50-50.
that's correct, yeah.
And so, are you actually saying then that the reason there's this gap from the Flagler armaments and the North Summer Haven armaments is that we just didn't have a sponsor for you to go in?
We actually looked at Summer Haven when we did the Blondo study about several years ago, and it lacked, at that time, it lacked sufficient damages to justify and the parking access was somewhat lacking. So we,
Public access.
yeah, so that was lacking, so does that mean we can't take another look at it? It does not. But the first step is getting a letter from somebody saying, this is what we want you to look at. And either we find a vehicle for funding and authorization that it goes into, or we write you a letter back to say, here's what we can.
Okay, because, you know, just the concern there with, is the court all concerned about what's happening with the ICW. I've gotten several letters this week about that new breach is now actually going, there's something called, the Summer Island and Baratilla Island. You know, that should be right when you're going south down there, and that now the breach is coming in, and the front doors have white mortar, so, it's a new island, basically.
Yeah.
So, but the Corps can't do a thing unless there's a government sponsor, and the government never sponsors it. It's like they have you here and right here, and just told you to go away for that one month.
Yeah, and so I know there's Band-Aid projects that FIND and Shelley do, they put sand on there from Matanzas, et cetera, but what I'm saying is to get us, when we do a study and we complete initial construction, the Corps of Engineers is on the hook under my authority for 50 years.
50 years.
So we do 50 years of renourishment or whatever that alternative is. So what they're doing is putting that sand there, but if you want a full 3-year study, it could bring a 50-year commitment. But again, you have to have a sponsor that's saying, yes, we're willing, and yes, we're willing financially to participate.
And the CAP program, that's not a really long study, that could sometimes start within 18 months.
It can, that's correct, yeah.
And one last question, because this is so interesting, thank you so much for coming, is you guys just finished the project out in front of the National Guard downtown St. Augustine, is that true?
That's a camp study under Mr. Suggs. I'm not privy to it, but Jim
I
did some.
just know, just offhand, I think we're done anyway, did they go down into the ground?
I'm not sure, man. That's a different project manager. I'm not really familiar with that. I did bring one thing to my mind though. We have another study on the queue for the city of St. Augustine for flooding, interior flooding, and for the back bay. So that study is waiting on a funding appropriation, but the mayor of St. Augustine's requested it, and it could come as early as this spring to start a new study for how to prevent flooding in downtown St. Augustine. So
And did you say the back bay?
back bay.
Back bay?
Yeah.
Meaning, like San Sebastian?
Yeah, so how's water coming on the backside and the front during storm surge events, et cetera. So flood walls, again, buyouts of property that are in low-lying areas, it brings a whole nest of opportunities and alternatives. Anything else? All right, thank you.
Next agenda item is public comment. That's for individual.
Slavin box 304, that's slavin.com, StOnScreen.com. We're thanking Mr. Harrell for his briefing. That's brilliant, very impressive. I took thorough notes. One thing I think we still need to do though is get a briefing by GTM America, Dr. Shirley and his staff, in Summerhaven, and also from that UF professor, who's a professor of engineering. She's an expert at Summerhaven. Never had those people here make a presentation, and I don't get it. Perhaps the chairman of his commissioner's report could give us a report of the current status of GTM America and what he's learned as the liaison. We need to have a respect for citizen participation in these meetings. People talking while I'm talking. We have an attorney over here who barked at me when I asked a question. I asked a question relating to one of the members' attendance. Attempted to ask the Secretary Treasurer, barked at me. Uncivil, uncouth. That is not acceptable. We need to consider seriously the use of mangrove trees. I attended a few years ago, 2016, a lovely 5-day conference, an international conference at Flagler College, put on by UF and ICAS. And it turns out that the northernmost boundary of mangrove trees now is in Guam because of global ocean level rise, because of global warming. Mangrove trees now grow in Guam. A few years ago in St. Augustine Beach, we had Mayor Andrea Samuels who was interrupting one of the consultants was making a presentation. And she says, "We don't have any mangrove trees here." I said, "Yes, we do. And we need to consider the use of mangrove trees as think the Corps needs to talk about this instead of capital intensive projects that fatten carpetbaggers and fatten contractors and fatten Great Lakes carbon. We need to consider the use of mangrove trees as natural armament to protect homes. We need to talk about that. Mayor Nancy Shaver, at her own expense, paid for a course in Holland on water and how to make water not go into your homes. We need to maybe consider sending one of your board members. Or if you have staff, which you don't, you can send a staff person there. You could consider asking the experts in Holland who really know a lot about water. I guess half the surface area in the Netherlands is reclaimed land. You can consider getting expert opinions like that. Not to denigrate the Army Corps in any way, but y'all take a look at the book Cadillac Desert. The Army Corps of Engineers made a mess west of the 100th meridian, out west. I'm not saying they do that in the east, they do fine work here, but if you look at the history of the Army Corps of Engineers and the Pier Reclamation out west, it caused a lot of misery, it caused a lot of damage, and it wasted a lot of money. So you all need different sources of information. You need to be friendlier when people come here in public comment. I remember the first time I entered this room and went to a meeting of the board 10, 15 years ago, whatever. The chairman at the time was bargaining. It's like, you don't want to hear from people. Some of y'all don't even maintain eye contact. Mr. Chairman, quite frankly, you're wrong on 286. If you make a decision, if you make a vote, we have a right to speak. And why would you argue about that? Because you're getting bad legal advice? You're a lawyer too, I understand. Not licensed in Florida maybe yet, but you're a lawyer. I called your attention to 286 how long ago? A couple of years ago. And you wouldn't even recognize me. Also, I wanted to say was something in support of the idea of we need grant applications. Why did you feel threatened? Why did you feel insecure? Because I wanted to have public comment on an agenda item that required a vote. You've never gotten the state attorney general's opinion on the issue. You've never done it in a scholarly manner. You're acting authoritarian and hierarchical. More like Joe Bowles or Len Weeks. I thought you were a reformer. I'm very disappointed in you, Mr. Chairman. The way that you treated Ms. Flowers, the way this Mr. Meeks has treated Ms. Flowers. You lack respect. You lack self-respect. You lack respect for the public's right to know. This is our money. Let's have these meetings over at the City of St. Augustine. Let's get them televised at the City of St. Augustine. Let's hold these meetings at a time that does not conflict with the St. Johns County Commission. I mentioned that a couple of years ago, and Mr. Way actually said that the BCC should change their meeting time. That's really arrogant. Don't do that again. Let's have meetings in public. Let's have them televised. And let's listen to people and be kinder and gentler. Because I don't appreciate being barked at by Mr. Dean. Don't ever do that again, son.
Comments by commissioners? Tom? Chris? Nothing here. Sandy? Great. All right. Our next meeting is Tuesday. Wait, no, that's not right. Our next meeting is going to be Tuesday. It looks like February the 15th. Is that right? 2022.
Yeah, conflicts with the
Until then,